where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
With the last words on my lips, that I am a revolutionary. And you're gonna have to keep on saying that.
And forgive me if this is impolite. Like, I'm curious why you wanted to talk to us.
What do you mean?
Well, like,
Yeah.
we don't have actually a lot of senators, especially ones who have very different ideology than us, reach out. So I'm curious what your goal was and why you thought to come here.
Guys, it's really, I feel like it's beyond time to have a talk, I feel like, but I feel like I'm really hoping that this people can understand something. When a CIA analyst talks, you listen. Quote unquote. What I really hope is not a real person on YouTube. What I really hope it's not. You guys should understand something about this idea of it being, having CIA politicians and just, personalities, people, content creators, people who are going on podcasts. This is a problem. This is a tremendous problem, okay? Because the idea of CIA analysts speaking in terms of being anti-Trump and gaining platform and gaining traction under that veneer of being anti-Trump. The Pentagon budget was increased. Right? That's, you need to understand, it was increased. Okay? Trump is not nearly as anti-establishment as Republicans have idolized him to be. Not nearly. Okay? I think there is certain frictions between the messaging, right? I mean, I think he was saying whatever, in a lot of cases, I think he was saying whatever he could to seem and really appear to be anti-establishment in a lot of cases. I think Epstein is probably the one that really strikes the hardest in terms of for the Republican base right now. But there's a messaging that's going on with everyone right now, with all the platformed people right now, that Epstein was really into 15 and 16-year-old girls or something like that.
So, why don't you answer that question? Like, why is this now is the time that you do care?
Yeah,
Or do you just not particularly care?
It's horrible when you have a pedophile and someone who had a literal pyramid scheme of recruiting 14 and 15-year-old girls.
Virginia says they're as young as 12, and there's another report that they're 11 and 12. But then I know of other people I know of therapists who have counseled Epstein victims, and we can get into that later. And actually, a lot of those victims a number of those victims were under the age of 10.
When it comes down to who should have the most credibility when talking about Epstein, it is going to be Nick Bryan.
When I had the Black Book in 2012, no one wanted to touch it. No one. And I went to every publication in New York City, and I was talking to editors and publishers, and no one wanted to touch it.
These media companies, what they need to be known as, mainstream media, they don't have any credibility when it comes to Epstein. They are releasing information based on when their oligarchs tell them that it's okay to release information.
At the time, I sort of saw it as like one of these horrible stories that comes out every 5 months, about somebody. I think the Weinstein thing had happened. There weren't Michiganders, to my knowledge, who were involved, women, young girls who were involved. So I kind of saw it as like a horrible moment, but not particularly something that's like going to decide whether someone in my state can buy a house or get a good job.
Being a CIA analyst means you're able to analyze information, assuming, right? And for you to say something on a podcast or whatever, to say that, oh, this isn't important for the Michiganders and things like that, I fully believe that Elissa Slotkin knows way more than what she's putting on. The idea here is that she is also very much trained, right? And a lot of the people, a lot of the like Steve Bannon is like he's probably the most underrated in terms of just how well he's able to play populist. He did a documentary series with Epstein, 15 hours of unreleased footage. And this is after Epstein was convicted and found guilty. This idea, he did this supposedly under the circumstances to where he would help Epstein improve his image. These people that are CIA and trying to get on your side, you need to understand they've all had something similar in terms of this training, right? You don't go into politics. I mean, even just the standard politicians have training, but when it comes down to the CIA, this scares me like a lot in terms of where we are going to be, because Democrats are not anti-Trump. They have a messaging that is anti-Trump, but no one's talking about the Venezuelan war. Like that's not, they're not raging against him bombing random, fishing boats and calling them cartel or something like that. They're not doing that because they know that there are very significant portions of this man that are deep state or this administration that are deep state functioning. They're not talking about Palantir. Palantir's on both sides of the aisle. Right? This idea of, also the idea of Epstein, Democrats could have easily said, okay, well, let's talk about.
As Brown writes, in 2016, an anonymous woman using the pseudonym Kate Johnson filed a civil complaint in a federal court in California, alleging she was raped by Trump and Epstein when she was 13, over a 4-month period, from June to September 1994. I loudly pleaded with Trump to stop, she said in the lawsuit about being raped. Trump responded to my pleas by violently striking me in the face with his open hand and screaming that he could do whatever he wanted. Brown continues. Johnson said that Epstein invited her to a series of underage sex parties at his New York mansion where she met Trump. Enticed by promises of money and modeling opportunities, Johnson said she was forced to have sex with Trump several times, including once with another girl, 12 years old, whom she labeled Marie Doe.
All this chaos that is coming down, in terms of ICE, in terms of, government employees being fired, every single one of us was betrayed, okay? Anybody who thought that there was going to be some kind of populist movement, this is betrayal, a bipartisan betrayal, okay? A CIA-sanctioned bipartisan betrayal.
I started a new series, which is called First Friends, which is sort of like a play on, like First Lady. And yeah, the idea is what you said, exploring the possibility of figures close to Donald Trump, still close to Donald Trump, that have unusual, or rather that have never been reported about connections to Epstein, which suggests that, if I could find it, I'm sure the New York Times and these people could have found it too.
Israel gets what they want. They are still getting what they want. When it comes down to this conflict in Russia, they're still getting what they want. I want you to understand, if Trump went too far off the rails for the people in charge, what would have happened is somebody would have slid that fat orange weirdo a video of him having sex with a minor, and then that would have been it. They would have told him to say, hey, cut it out. That would have been the establishment looking out for you. They don't care about you. Okay, you need to understand that. There is no, we're just trying to do this and do that. Democrats have a very specific mission. It is not to be anti-Trump. It is to promote anti-Trump rhetoric while trying to essentially make their brand of corruption more appealing to you. These people are monsters. These people are absolute monsters. They don't care about you, okay? And I'm blanket calling all politicians, but it's mainly the ones with the connections. The connections to stop, right? Because there's a filter mechanism.
Only if we have compromise on you do you get ahead.
Right.
It's like, I don't know, it's one of these
Skull and bones
closet,
type
yeah,
things.
the closet of the Vatican.
Right.
The claim is 80% of the cardinals in the Catholic Church are gay. Not sure if that's true, but directionally it's probably correct. And the basic thesis is you don't get promoted to a cardinal if you're straight, because you need to be compromised, and then you're under control, but you also get ahead.
That system is very much in place, and you got to understand that the CIA has never been on your side. Alyssa Slotkin, she got really embarrassed, honestly, in this interview, and she has on her page that she wants to essentially get money out of politics. That's one of her initiatives, right? The Michigander initiatives. You need to think about that. Think about what getting money out of politics means. And then I want you to think about the way she answered their question regarding having Israel sign up as a foreign lobbyist.
Do you think AIPAC should register as a foreign lobby?
I don't know the answer to that. I think that I know plenty of people who think they should.
Mm-hmm.
I
It's
don't.
kind of a cop-out answer, don't you think?
I literally, I just guess I'd have to look at the definition.
You need to stop thinking in terms of the rhetoric that people put out there being anti-Trump, okay? The idea of being anti-war, that's what we need, okay? We really don't need someone whose messaging is, I am anti-Trump. That can mean a variety of things. Right, but apparently it doesn't mean anti-Palantir. It doesn't mean anti-Venezuela, blowing up Venezuelan boats. Right? You don't. That's not the messaging. You don't really, being like, oh well, this anti. They're not going to really be anti anything, as long as they have a boogeyman that they can essentially pin everything on. Allen Dulles, who really is responsible for forming the CIA into what it is, he was a finance guy. Okay, he was a big finance guy, so people don't really quite understand about this guy sometimes. He started in finance. He built his network through his financial connections, his financial gains. That's where his power was. It was in the financial realm. Regime change, all that stuff, that's not meant to benefit you, right? This idea of,
I think that it would be a good thing if America could take all their oil and natural gas. We need the energy. We want the energy.
Even the people who are honest about why, we're going after Venezuela are going to say something like, oh, we just want their oil and their gas and minerals. But I want you to understand, the people who are honest about it, they're being honest about why quote unquote we want it. But it's really about why the large corporations want Venezuela. You think if you think that Exxon Gas and all those other people are going to somehow find a way to share the profits with the soldiers that go and put boots on the ground over there, no, absolutely not. We're going to put those people into whatever kind of mental hospital we come up with, and then we'll figure it out from there. Okay, there is no, oh, this benefits everyone. Okay, it is literally for the corporations to gain, to essentially become richer at whatever cost.
All right, but we set up Doge. Yes. How much do you think we can rip out of this wasted $6.5 trillion Harris-Biden budget?
Well, I think we can do at least $2 trillion.
Yeah!
Yes.
The Pentagon budget was increased. I feel like that's automatically you're out of the race. Like, right? What are you talking about? You're anti-Trump. You're an ex-CIA analyst. He obviously supports the CIA. Like, this is pretty easy to see that. I don't understand what we're talking about. But also the idea of being on her page, she also talks about Russia and this idea of being a fighter for essentially just combating Russia in a way. And this is interesting for a few reasons, but Russia has a very the U.S. has a very robust Russian propaganda messaging.
We like to have people say the war started on February 24th, 2022, when Russian troops entered Ukraine. Nobody talks about the fact that on February 14th, 2022, the Ukrainians began their offensive against the Donbass. They started firing artillery shells 10 times at a rate 10 times greater than what they had done before. They began the artillery preparation. They were scheduled to invade with 80,000 NATO-trained Ukrainian soldiers on around March 6th. The Russians had this information. They were telling the West, don't let the Ukrainians mass their troops. Everybody in the West, trainloads of Ukrainian armor and everything moving towards the Donbass. The Russians said no. They preempted it. But that's not really. How about 2014, when the U.S. CIA back, remember Victoria Nuland, John McCain with the cookies? Remember Victoria Nuland with the phone call? And our man Yats, we handpicked the leadership, but we don't know about the CIA's ongoing relationship with the Ukrainian nationalists, the Azov, the Nazis. 2014, when we unconstitutionally removed an elected president.
In terms of Russia being this, this overwhelming threat to America, Tenet Media was something that came out recently as a Tenet Media scandal where essentially it was found that content creators were being paid by Russia. You need to understand that in this particular case, I've actually read through the document on this case. I believe it was it was some kind of court case filing. I forget what the name of it was, but they listed how they actually caught these people, and it was very interesting to me because I am someone who is, I've probably read about 2 books on privacy and security and stuff like that, and I think it's important. I think it's something to kind of understand. And I say that because when I look at this court case and I'm looking at how they caught Tenet Media, they caught them in a way that I would have known to avoid. And I want you guys to understand, my job has never depended on hiding my activities or anything like that, and my life doesn't depend on that. My livelihood doesn't depend on that. My paycheck doesn't depend on that. So when we think about the quality of the hackers that come out of Russia, I want you guys to understand something. This idea of them being responsible for Tenet Media and being found out and exposed in a way that I would have known to avoid, it should be very, very questionable to anyone. And if you know someone who is in information security, privacy, or anything like that, I recommend you have them look at the actual case, because it's interesting to think that how much of attention that our government puts on defending against Russia for essentially this court case to come out, and now we're seeing that Russia may not be nearly as interested in manipulating our populace as they as they essentially put on for these past few years. That's a gaping hole in this idea that Russia is a boogeyman that we need to worry about. So definitely something that she's on this trail for Russia, being a fighter against Russia, to defend America against Russia. The CIA, the last and most certainly not least, in terms of the nail in the coffin, we'll call it for this video. Edward Snowden is still in Russia seeking refuge for exposing the crimes of this intelligence apparatus that is essentially the CIA. You need to understand, there has been no correction. There has been no correction. So in terms of with these people coming out now to say like, oh, I'm ex-CIA, there is no coming out into any type of public setting and saying that I'm ex-CIA. These aren't good. These aren't good people. These aren't people who live respectable lives in any way, shape, or form. You can assume that these are the people who put like on computers and plant that on computers. That's what you can assume. And kill people who threaten oil and gas, conglomerates or anything like that. These are the people who assassinate Americans who are trying to make a better life for Americans. These are not the people who you trust. These are never the people that you trust. And it is extremely worrisome to think that these people are starting to try to come out into the light. Like, there is no coming out into the light, okay? Like I said before, Edward Snowden being in Russia is the nail in the coffin. There has been no corrections in behavior. These people are still monsters. There should be no pro-CIA movement within the Democratic Party. We got to understand that these people can't gain relevancy in terms of politics and society because they will be worse than the politicians who have already sold us out in a lot of cases. In any case, I hope you have a good day. Thank you.
Where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
With the last words on my lips, that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that.